this week's episode of People Over Politics. I'm your host, Martin Mitchell, and today we have a very special guest. You guys all know I'm from gorgeous Prince George's County, so we have a Prince Georgian here today. Hey, Kim, how you doing?
Really good. Thank you.
Yes. So, for Kim, for people who don't know about you, and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Okay, just a little bit.
Well, I say just a little bit because we're going to engage in conversation and I'll learn more about you. But
Okay,
give them the overview.
sure. Kim Taylor, candidate for state delegate in District 23, covers Bowie, Mitchellville, Upper Marlboro, South Laurel, parts of Beltsville. I am an activist, an advocate that advocates for aggressive policy for long-term care and other senior issues. I worked for State Senator Paul Pinsky for about 5 years, a few years ago. So I know what I'm getting myself into. A business owner for 25 years. My husband and I have taken care of Maryland's seniors and veterans for over 25 years. And I'm a caregiver. I care for my mother before she passed, my grandmother, and my son who's recovering from a mental health crisis right now. So he's 24.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're doing a lot of great things, and have done a lot of great things over the years.
Yeah.
And one of the things I know that is big. You're running, running for office, right? So that of course is something huge. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
It always takes courage to put your name on the ballot.
Yeah.
So,
it's something that I've thought about for a long time.
Absolutely. Well, tell us more about your race. Of course, we've had several people on talking about, I'm excited about District 23. I think it's going to be, one of the hot races to watch in the state, not only Prince George's County. My good friend Richard Elliott has said that on the show, as well as Jocelyn Collins, former coworker of mine. So we've had a lot of people from the 23 on. So give me your perspective of the race. It's a lot of names out there. I will say there's a lot of names, and I think more names than I've seen in quite some time. So
here's the good news: people want to run. Right?
Yes.
People want to represent our district in Annapolis. And quite frankly, we have some very qualified folks in this race. I admire Jocelyn. I know you and she work together. And she and I are sort of partners in this race, as you know.
Yeah.
And but you're right. The field is crowded. There are 9 folks actively seeking 3 seats. And there are 3 seats this time because District 23 is no longer an A and B district. We've been consolidated into one. So now those who formerly were in 23A have an opportunity to vote for up to 3 candidates for delegate, which I think is exciting for them.
Yeah, I mean, it is exciting, and it's like, is it 10 of y'all? It's about 10
It's
of y'all.
9. It's not.
Oh, it's 9. But if you throw in the Senate race, you got like a 12 person race. And are there any Republicans?
If you're adding the Senate, then you have 3 that are running for the Senate seat.
Are there any Republicans in that district running? Okay, yeah. I mean that's still a heck of a race, right? Like the thought is Bowie and that 23 is going to be a madhouse come early voting in the polls because you're going to see so many people campaigning. But of course we appreciate that, free democracy. Anybody has the ability to run. So of course I'm not discouraging anybody.
Sure.
I'm just mentioning that when you have so many more people, it is harder sometimes to distinguish yourself, right? So the thought is like, what sets you apart from the crowd, right? Like for me, for Jocelyn, it's one person that if I didn't say, I support wholeheartedly, definitely support wholeheartedly. For her, it's the legislative experience that she, has, right? And not just the legislative experience, but the experience in the Democratic Party, the experience in the public service, so what sets you apart as a candidate?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I mean, working in the Senate for a senator for 5 years, um, I worked on some legislation. Um, and I did outreach to our community. Now that was District 22 and had 7 municipalities, which was really interesting. But I had a great opportunity to talk to and interface with the community and find out what their needs are. But what really happened while I was there is I learned the importance of a legislator's ability to connect a constituent with the appropriate party in the executive branch. For instance, if you have a problem with your licensing, you go to Department of, DLLR or insurance. So I realize how important it is to engage your legislators when you have an issue, and you have that right. And more people ought to exercise that right. When they have an issue, call your representative. They are supposed to know who to connect you to get you the expertise to solve your issues or handle your challenges.
I agree. And
Now that's one thing. Now, secondly, I have been working. One of the things that sets me apart, and you guys may have seen the news reports, the Washington Post article about the appraisal bias. I'm one of the founders of the Fair and Unbiased Appraisal Advocates, and we're a grassroots organization that started from one phone call that I received as HOA president a little over a year ago from someone in my community that was about to build a home. And the family was shocked at the appraisal that they received when they knew that same house built 10 miles down the street or 20 miles down the street or just across the river or the bridge would have been about $800 to $1 million more. And
Wow.
his appraisal didn't even match what he was paying to get the house built. That started a movement in our county to address these biases, and ultimately resulted in one of the things is having legislation passed that created a task force that will include stakeholders from different Maryland agencies that have the expertise in this area and are able to address the issue of bias and inequities in our appraisals. We've lost billions in wealth in the Black community because our homes have not been valued the same as others.
That's 100% true. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate the effort that's put in, especially in Prince George's County. One of the things that I've realized that long before becoming a council member is it is very difficult to age in place in Prince George's County, and not just in Prince George's County, but many places all over.
That's
So
right.
it is definitely good that you're in that fight. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you was more on a couple policy questions, see where your positions are. All elected school board or hybrid?
All elected. I understand why we went the way we went. You
Okay.
know, I'm just, now I think it's time to listen to what.
Get them on your side right there. That one. That's a great one. I love that answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, we gave the other way a shot. It didn't work.
Well,
Let's go back to.
I would say, how do you combat that with the top of the ticket? Does Ron want to fully elected now, or has he changed his position?
I'm not speaking for Ron.
I get you. I get you. Hey, that's
I'm
fair.
not going to speak for Ron.
That's fair.
Yeah, but the issue of school boards is not unique to Prince George's County. They're dysfunctional across the country.
Sure.
We are not dealing with a dysfunctional school board just here. If you read about school boards and all across the country, you're going to see all kinds of fights and disputes with the school board. It's just the nature of a school board to have those kind of challenges. So I'm hoping this time around we're gonna do better, and we'll be more in sync.
Well, you said the words that I like to hear, all fully elected. So that's what I like to hear. I think the people can make their minds up, about the individuals, and obviously sometimes we elect individuals that might not serve our interests, right? So that's why we have elections very often, right?
Well,
So
we need programs like this, right, to make sure that we're electing the right people. So if you're going to elect somebody on the school board, they ought to have some experience with the school, right? They ought to have been a teacher, involved with the PTA, something, or even have some experience with working with budgets, because we have a huge budget in Prince George's County. So that kind of expertise would lend well to our school board. And I love the fact that we still have a student member on the board. I know they're non-voting, but we got to keep that student member.
We want to give them voting rights. Let me know here and now. Do you want to give them voting rights? I want to give them voting rights. I believe that they can make decisions. I believe that these are smart, young, capable individuals.
I agree that they are smart and they are capable, but they're 16 and 17 years old.
So you wouldn't give them a vote?
I'm not sure that I would give them a vote on a budget. Now, how about we do what Congress does? And we give, a DC a vote, but not really a vote. We have them weigh in. We have them vote the way they would vote. We take that into consideration. But when you look at counting the numbers and when you look at majority versus non-majority, and at the end of the day, the vote's not really counted.
Yeah, but that's like, right? That's like, but why? Right? The thought is like, but why? They don't really have any power. They don't really have.
I get it. So I get it. I'm just very. I'm a mother.
Sure.
And I have, I've raised kids that kind of think they know, and they're very smart, but they have not had the experience to really make those hard decisions.
I get it, but they have the lived experience, right? So that's, even for me, you talked about the municipalities. I believe that 16 and 17-year-olds should have the right to vote in local municipalities. We know that state law allows them to register to vote, but it's up to the local municipality if they will have voting rights in that said election. So there's a couple municipalities that have done that. But the thought is like, these are people who are closest to the issues, right? And this is why, me speaking as a millennial, I can tell you that I feel as though like politics and administration doesn't involve young people as much as they should in the decision-making process. Right?
But there is a student member on the school board who gets to ask questions. Sure. He or she gets to speak. He or she gets to weigh in on every decision. And I would hope that all the members of the school board would listen to that young person and take his or her opinions into account. Now, what I'd like to ask you is, have you seen where this has not happened? Has that student member, and I know Ed Burrows used to be the student member years ago, didn't feel like, or their opinion didn't count?
Yes, I've felt like in many occasions they felt like their opinion didn't count, right? Because a lot of times, as you said, it's not backed with a vote. It's just you voicing your opinion. And a lot of times I feel as though they should have the opinion because they're the ones who are going to deal with the issues, right? I really have a problem with the mindset of like young people can't make up their minds, because the thought is, right, I feel like old people can't make up their minds, right? What makes an older person a better voter than a 16 or 17-year-old?
I think experience, Martin, means experience. That's why you just don't go to any doctor that has not had proper training, because they don't know, and they're not familiar with all the nuances that may come along with a certain decision, because they haven't lived it yet. And I'm a very different person than I was at GW, a student leader, who felt I was very capable, president of my sorority chapter, won the very first award for leadership and community service. I got all A's in the first 100 in my biology class, and I was probably one of the only Black kids in the class. But so I felt empowered and confident. But having raised kids, been married, own a home, had kids in private, public, and homeschool, I'm certain that the decisions I'd make now with those experiences would be way different than the Kim Taylor or the Kim Beverly as a 19-year-old or 18-year-old. So I hear you. And you know what? If we ever gave them that right, I'd be fine with it. I just think that we got to earn certain rights. You got to get there before you can fully participate.
Being elected as a student school board member is them earning their right. That's them earning their right, in my opinion.
They earn their right for a seat at the table.
Because experience, a person doesn't get experience unless you give them experience, right? So that's the same kind of mindset, even in politics, where they're like, oh, you're too young to run, you're not experienced enough to run. The thought is like, that is not the case in most cases, and I'll be the first one to say that, because the thought is like, I've learned that young people, they can be very good lie detectors and truth seekers, right? Mm-hmm. So the thought is like, someone who is 30 or over, who is quote unquote experienced and have these life experiences, sometimes they view politics in a completely different sphere, and they accept information differently, right? So I feel like some of the young people, they are more like critical of certain things that would be considered establishment, this, that, and third. So I feel as though, as you see it, they question the young activists, the young, the young change makers, move makers. So they are
every major change we've had in this country in terms of civil rights has happened on a college campus. Yes. Absolutely, I get that.
Exactly. And for me, I just want to also cancel the stigma and the mindset that just because you're experienced doesn't mean you're an educated voter, or doesn't mean you're going to make the best decisions when it comes to budget issues, right?
And that's why we started this conversation, because I said that we need to make sure that we're voting for people who have the experience and the knowledge to be competent school board members.
And the one question I will ask you is, out of all of the board members, who will continue going to school every day there?
What do you mean? Who will continue to go to school? Oh, you mean the school board? I mean the student member. Absolutely.
Correct. So that's in fact why they should have a vote.
Yeah.
Because they will continue to go there. None of those older people making decisions will continue to go there. Yes, some of their kids might go there. Yes, they might have their best judgment at heart, but none of them go there, 5 days a week, for the summer programs or whatever else it might be.
But we did.
You said, but hey, and that's fair. And that's fair. But I'll be honest with you, right? I'm a coach in Laurel High School, right? And I've coached for years, ever since I've graduated.
Yeah.
Laurel High School, as I know it, is not the same high school that I went to 10, 12 years ago. Right. So that's why, and that's why, me being fair, I speak to the students and I learn their issues, because at the end of the day, they're closer to the issues. So when it came to a decision making, I would love for them to be able to vote and be a change maker and move people's opinion. Because the thought is, yes, your voice matters, but we know that vote matters even more.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why we're telling people to vote.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna harp on you, Kim. Kim, I love engaging in conversation.
Yeah, me too. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm gonna have to do in Annapolis, right? On issues that, and we have to learn how to.
Hard at you about the student school board member rights. I'm gonna come hard. Boom, I'm gonna come hard at you. Be like, who's doing to support that?
And that's what I want you to do. I want you to do that, and I want you to come hard, because I want you to try to convince me that you're right.
Absolutely. Hey, that's great, Kim. So one of the big topics we have coming up, November 2nd, cannabis legalization. What is your take? Do you want it to pass? Where are you on the issue?
So I'm torn. Okay, this is the mommy in me again. All right, that comes out. Decriminalization all day. Yes, let's get folks that were put in jail in the 80s, 90s, for whatever, for small amounts, or minuscule amounts of weed, let's get them out of jail. Like I've had several cousins, brothers, that were locked up, my family. And it was crazy. It was dumb, right? Yeah. So you asked me about marijuana legalization. So
you want legalization to pass. You want legalization to pass.
No, let's keep going because
I keep going. Okay.
My kids smoke weed, right? They do, right? But I've had one who went away to college, smoked something, and he's never been the same. So it makes me nervous to think that my kids or somebody else's kids would have access to very freely a substance that might change their entire body chemistry, and they go from a college student to a child or a young adult that can't function. So I'm working on that, but this is the life that I don't wish on any parent.
And I can understand that, and I respect you, and I empathize with that story, because we know that with certain things there can be laced. So it sounds like that was probably something laced, but that's why legalization is important, because it allows regulation, right? So the black market that flourishes, wouldn't flourish the same if you had a medical and a recreational market, because you'll have things tested, so it wouldn't just be coming from street pharmacists necessarily.
Right. And that's the other part of it, is that education is really important to my generation about this whole thing. So, because we're all coming from my mindset, right? But I also know that, I have a gummy, that helps me sleep. Right?
Absolutely. Probably a CBD or CBG. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's no THC in it, but it's
no. The CBD CSG is the cousin plant. So it's the non-THC plant.
Listen, I rely on my 20-year-old to explain those kind of things to me.
Yeah,
and he does it very well. He's done a lot of research, and he's got his card.
Yes.
And he's doing quite well. And it's helped him, be the best person that he can be while he's in school or in college. So I'm great with that.
That's awesome, and that's a great medical story where it's helping him. And and I'm a medical patient. If I never told you, I'm a medical patient, and a lot of times it helps me with neurodivergency. So people medicate for many different reasons, and one of the things I've even seen, Kim, I've even seen older people, right? So I remember 10 years ago, I knew that it was going to be something that was trending because I saw it on Oprah. It was a soccer mom, and she was talking about using cannabis, like, while the kids were away at school, or something like that. And the thought is, like, I knew this was going to be a big thing, because now we have soccer moms talking about it and feeling more comfortable to talk about it. And then the thought is like I was explaining to you, is you have the CBD and you have the THC. The THC is, of course, the one that gives you those psychoactive effects, the euphoria. The CBD is for more relaxation and more pain relief. And it doesn't give you that euphoria. So that is what I encourage a lot of people who are, not familiar with cannabis, especially things with high THC. I say, hey, try CBD. Like for my mom, she started using the rubs and the bombs and was like, oh, these are great. These are
I went to my first dispensary when I was in Vegas.
Really?
I did. I went to that super one, that huge one. And I was so impressed with the shopping mall kind of feel. And there was a cafe there, and they also had a section where you could actually watch them preparing. I forgot what it was, but they were making something, and I just thought that was very cool. And I want to see if we're going to have that industry be legal in Maryland. I don't want to see us left out of the economics of it.
And us being not just Maryland.
Black people, yeah, let's be clear.
Yeah, not just Maryland. Yes, be clear. Let's be clear.
Yeah, and I have friends in California and other places that are already capitalizing on the industry, and are sort of just waiting for it to be legal on this end. They're looking for distributors. It's the whole thing. So I have been, I've had lots of talks with friends and family members about the issue, about the benefits. Every once in a while, my son will send me an article and read this so you can learn more about this thing. So anyway,
yes.
I don't feel like I'm completely in the dark about it.
No. And I could understand your concerns as a parent, especially someone who had experienced a negative situation. So I could completely understand that. And I expect to continue engaging with conversations with you, but also other Prince Georgians and other people around the state, because the thought is, we have to change some people's minds and educate some people around cannabis, around hemp plant, around all things related, and as you said, equity, right? So after we pass it on the ballot, I want to make sure we have a framework next session. So whoever's there next session, I want to make sure they're listening about the equity piece of it. And the first part of it is we have to decide what equity looks like.
Yeah, but I think it's important that we kind of get out there now to talk to people about it. And maybe we can host a workshop or something to get folks in a room and say, look, these are the facts.
Yeah.
I'm
Agreed.
willing to work with you on that.
And I'm all here for that. And we're gonna do a cannabis conference, I think either later in the summer or sometime in the fall. So
here in Maryland?
Well, no, the BlackUSA.news USA. Be More News. Here we're going to be doing our cannabis conference. We're going to have a bunch of different sponsors and participants, from all over the ecosystem. So we'll definitely make sure to invite you back. And I'd love to do something additionally with you, put on a Zoom, something virtually. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, me being a Laurel councilman, I feel like in 23, South Laurel is the redheaded stepchild. What are we going to do to change that? Can we show South Laurel some love, the mainly Black and brown, part of 23,
Right. Well, where was I 3 Mondays ago?
Okay, true.
I was at your meeting, right?
I understand. You're right. You were in Laurel. But I'm worried about the South Laurel aspect, because you were worried about the connection.
The South Laurel. That is the case, but it's not that much difference between the city of Laurel and South Laurel. There are some, but
resources.
Well, of course that. But I wanted, to be there to meet some of the residents of Laurel.
Yes.
I have been knocking on doors in Laurel. In fact, we finished knocking all of South Laurel and parts of Beltsville that are in 23. I had a great reception. I think it's important that we explain to those residents that they're no longer just voting for one person. They're voting for 3 or up to 3. And how that can be better, actually, where you have 3 representatives that you can reach out to as opposed to just one. Here's another piece. You also, for our high school kids that are going on to college, for the college scholarships that the delegates give.
Yeah.
Before the 23A, you only had Geraldine Valentino Smith that you would go to. Now you have 3 options.
You're right.
So now you can get 3 different scholarships for your kids going to college. So that's a win. And whenever there's something going on in South Laurel or the parts of or anywhere in Beltsville, I plan to be there. I mean, I've started joining the social media groups, the Facebook groups, Beltsville News, just to make sure that I am aware of what's going on and can be a better representative for that area.
Hey, and that's fair. And Beltsville, I think Beltsville's doing just okay. I just want to mention that South Laurel needs more love. And I tell everybody who's running for 23 that. All
right, you help me show more love there.
Hey, I'm right here.
I need to do.
I'm right here. There is an area that I need cleaned up in South Laurel, right off of Laurel Bowie Road. So anytime I want to do a cleanup, I texted a couple people running countywide, also at 23. Hey, this area, clean up maybe. So you know I'm down to get active. So you call me up. You know,
I didn't get that text. Send it to me.
okay, you're right. I'll show you the same courtesy. I got you. So Kim, before I get you out of here, I wanted to ask you 3 quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you was what philosophy or theory do you follow or do you idolize the most? I know, right? I do it out of left field.
That's a really out there question. So I was say this. I was asked during another interview if I could change one thing in Prince George's County, like what would it be? Like what major shift would I make or would I hope for? And I said, love thy neighbor. And I went on to explain that as, you know, we have gotten away from community, right? We're so busy going to school, going to work, coming home, Zoom meetings, getting up the next day, repeat. And then on the weekends, we do the same thing now. It used to be the weekends, we'd at least hang out with our neighbors. You know, we'd have cookouts. We'd, you know, do things with the kids. But we're too busy. We're too busy to know that our neighbor next door, who might be elderly, may look like they're okay as they're coming to the mailbox and back, because that's the only time you see them. But you don't really know that they don't have any food, or they're struggling getting their prescription medicine. So I would love to see us be more neighborly.
I got you. The next question, Pepsi or Coke?
Neither.
Hey, fair. A lot of people say water. So a couple people have said Diet Coke. The last
I take water with no ice and extra lemon everywhere I go. So now you know, when we go out to, you know, when I win my victory dinner, you got to water, no ice, extra lemon.
Yes. And the last thing I would ask you is favorite superhero.
Ooh.
Yes. It gives you an opportunity to shine.
Black Panther.
Okay, fair. I appreciate
Wakanda all day. I think we live in the closest thing to Wakanda, you know, in Prince George's.
I just watched 42 today. That was a Jackie Robinson, Chadwick. Amazing. Yes, big ups. Kim, I appreciate you for being on. I wish you the best of luck in 23. You know, July 19th is going to be big for everybody. Tell people how they can stay connected with you, Kim.
My website is Kim for Maryland, spelled out KYMFOR, Maryland, and Twitter, Instagram, Kim for Maryland, KYM4MD.
Well, appreciate it, guys. Make sure to get connected with Kim, learn about her and the campaign. Please. There's a lot of big things happening in 23.
Yep.
And, Kim, like I said, I wish you the best. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Martin. Take care.
Yes, absolutely. That was Kim. See you next time for our next guest. So we got a second guest. Our second guest coming all the way from Howard County, one of our neighbors. You know me as a Laurel resident. You know, it touches Howard County, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, and it's in Prince George's County. So I have one of my neighbors here and a friend of mine, Jake Burdette. Jake Burdette, how you doing today?
Hey, Martin, I'm doing well. Thanks. Thank you for having me on.
Yes. So, you know, Jake, I've known him for several years. We've been in the fight for democratic, progressive-ish issues, and you know, all things people related. I know you being a labor guy, a union guy, but for people who don't know about you, Jake, tell them your elevator pitch.
Yeah, so my elevator pitch, I am originally from Howard County, Maryland, where I live now. Still, I'm 24 years old, and yeah, I really sort of got into progressive activism. It was the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign. Really spoke to me in terms of issues of, you know, income and wealth inequality, and Howard County, Maryland being one of the wealthiest counties in the country. His message really resonated with me because I could see those issues existing in my own community. So I went to college at Salisbury University, got very involved with local and statewide. Progressive politics, was big supporter of Ben Jealous in his gubernatorial campaign. 2018, got involved with a lot of different college Democrat stuff. And then, it was through the Maryland for Bernie Sanders stuff in 2020 that Martin and I were able to meet each other. And, I was a political science major in college and was very involved politically on the Eastern Shore. And then once I graduated college in 2020 and came back to Howard County, I continued to get involved here. Me and others formed a group called the Progressive Democrats of Howard County, which I am now the current president of. And I'm also really excited that I'm running with a team of 16 other strong progressives on a slate for Howard County Democratic Central Committee. We're running on a team called HOCO for Us. And the primary is on July 19th. So I've been keeping myself pretty busy in a lot of different progressive causes, even since I've left college in 2020.
Absolutely. And I Bernie 2020, of course, I remember that being on the Maryland for Bernie Sanders committee and doing a lot in that role. But I thought I knew you before then. Sheesh, it was only the Maryland for Bernie Sanders campaign. So one of the things I wanted to discuss is I remember you being a labor and union organizer. You were in the fight with Amazon, right? Like you were on the ground in Maryland. So tell us that story.
Yeah, so I don't know if it would be fair to call me a union organizer per se, but I was definitely an organizer that was supportive of unions because, I've been doing progressive activism for, well over 5 years now. And I was involved with that well before I worked for Amazon. But the background on the Amazon, how I got involved with that is I started working for Amazon basically right during the height of the pandemic from August 2020 to March 2021. So for an 8-month period when COVID was basically at its height, vaccinations did not exist yet, or they're only just now kind of starting to roll out. And this was also a very interesting time to be working for Amazon because it was during that first unionization drive in Bessemer, Alabama. So I was working for Amazon at a time when COVID rates were at an all-time high. We had an app as Amazon workers that would give us a notification every time one of our coworkers tested positive with COVID. And, I promise you, Martin, we were getting one of those notifications at least once a week. And, months later, they're sending out statistics to us. And I'm finding out that they're having over 200 of us working in a warehouse at a single time, again, during the height of the pandemic. And, we were being paid $15 an hour, which is better than minimum wage, but still people were struggling to meet their bills, meet their obligations.
Hazard pay for longer.
You said what?
They should have got hazard pay for longer.
Yes,
for the period of time.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Martin, even though I was there for 8 months during the pandemic, I didn't receive a single dollar of hazard pay because they only did hazard pay for the first 2 or 3 months of the pandemic. And since I got there in August 2020, it had already been 5 or 6 months. They had already scrapped hazard pay. So absolutely, they deserve hazard pay. Most workers, including myself, didn't receive a single penny of it. And all of this is so much even more insulting because they're calling us essential workers, and the owner of Amazon, we know, at the time was the richest human being in the world. He's now since been surpassed a little bit by Elon Musk, but still the second richest man in the world. They absolutely could afford to give us better, safer work conditions, higher pay, and they refused to. So while I unfortunately didn't have the chance to successfully unionize my workplace, I was definitely talking to my coworkers about the work conditions that we were facing, about what was going on in Bessemer, Alabama, trying to gauge their support. And I wish that I could have stayed at Amazon longer and actually, helped really put a union together. But nonetheless, I'm proud of the advocacy I was able to do for things like the Maryland Essential Workers Act to try to get us hazard pay, doing that on behalf of my workers who, maybe didn't have that advocacy experience. So it was definitely a great learning experience, and I'm super happy to see that they were actually successful in New York. And congratulations to Chris Small, and I hope to see the snowball continue to grow.
Yes, and I know Amazon. It is like it's like a double-edged sword, right? So in politics or just in public service, one of the first things is that Amazon brings jobs, right? That's one of the first things and that's one of the things that they're gonna pitch when they come into your community. They want a new distribution center or whatever else it might be. So jobs, we're gonna bring jobs to the community. The question people ask then is how many jobs and what are the quality of those jobs, right? Because the thought is like just bringing like low wage, low paying jobs isn't the most ideal sometimes, right? So, Amazon, from what I've seen, like a lot of times there's a lot of turnover. Like people get burnt out, people get overworked, underappreciated, so like in your opinion, just working there, how has Amazon become this conglomerate that it is today, right?
Yeah,
like,
no, and you would
going back.
Yeah, and you would think that you have worked there, Martin, the way that you were describing it, so accurately. But in terms of the way, how did it become that? I think that this is just kind of the natural end result. I think Amazon is really emblematic of kind of the state of how we think about economics in this country and how we boil everything down, and particularly corporations boil everything down to a dollar value and amount of profit that they can extract and exploit from you. And that is absolutely how they look at their laborers. And it's really a surreal kind of gross feeling walking into that warehouse for the first time, because when you go in, it's completely gray and colorless and there's no decoration. It just does not look like a fun place. It's a depressing place. Nobody's happy to be there. We're all packed in there like cattle. And, it feels like we're just like going into the meat grinder together. And as I said earlier, they have over 200 of us working on a single shift at the same time. And, I think part of it is, they just want to throw everybody at the meat grinder, see who makes it out on the end. And we are completely disposable. And I think part of the tactic is they schedule so many workers working at the same time, even though they don't actually need that many workers at the same time, because they've just like factored that into their business model that, a high percentage of our workers are not going to be here in like 2 or 3 months. And that's okay, because we'll just keep on putting people into that meat grinder. And, we don't need everybody to stay forever. We just need a certain number of people to stay for the next couple months. And then we can, go on to the next set of people. And they take advantage of an economy that doesn't offer a lot of opportunity or wages to people. And then they exploit desperate people in desperate situations by offering just slightly higher pay than other minimum wage jobs, and hoping that people will, accept lackluster work conditions. And some people, unfortunately, do have to accept that because they have no other options. And even myself, I wasn't really at Amazon by choice. I was one of those people in a desperate situation. I have a criminal background, not for anything serious, but because while I was a student in college, I live streamed a protest at far-right Republican Congressman Andy Harris's office. It was a marijuana legalization protest. I live streamed it. He pressed 2 felony charges against me in a highly controversial case. I was not convicted of anything, but nonetheless, just because I had felony charges on my record, it was hard for me to get employment. Amazon is one of few places that was willing to hire somebody with a record like mine. And that's great, but it's unfortunate that that's what they do to these people in desperate situations, is they recognize that, exploit you, pay you for as little. And then it's so bad that I meet people, and I met people at the job who left Amazon for a lower paying job because the conditions were so bad. It was so physically deteriorating on you after a couple months, and it just wasn't a sustainable lifestyle. So I really hope this unionization wave starts to change things for the better there.
Yeah. And, I've seen businesses with the same business model I used to work in, like I forget what exactly it would be called, but it was for like Environment Virginia, and they were the fundraising arm for Perg. Have you heard of US Perg?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have. Yeah, I've
So
applied for them before as well. But
yes, I mean, hey, right? So I was graduating Bowie, and I think the flyer said something like, "Do you want to make like $2,000, two to 3 grand, saving the world?" Like it sounded so great. I was like, "Yeah," you know what I mean? The environment.
yeah,
So I went there and I became like an office manager or something. So it was me and like 3 other people, and I quickly realized that the culture in there was burnout, right? So like, I think I was working 6 days a week, like 12, 13 hours, and I had to commute from like Laurel to DC all the time. And then once I got there, some days I had to go to Northern Virginia with the team, to lead the door knocking. But most of the time I was in the office. But one of the things that I realized is like every day we were interviewing people. Like if it wasn't every day, it was like every other day. But like multiple times a week we were interviewing people, and the interview wasn't even serious, like because I was one of the people interviewing people. Like the interview process wasn't really serious, like apply, come in for a quick 20, 30, we're gonna ask you some BS questions, and unless you're like a terrible person, we're gonna hire you. But the thought is we're gonna work you, and we're gonna work you to the bone. And the model is we're gonna work you to the bone, we're gonna make sure you don't want to be here, and we're gonna, the turnover is quick, but it's okay because we're just hiring the next person, one person out, one person in. So it's like they're burning you out with that intention, like you don't want to stay here. You know what I mean? By no means do you want to stay there. You don't want to stay there and unionize and make this a better place. You just want to go elsewhere. And that happens to be the business model. A lot of people just give up. Like, nope, I'm not dealing with this. Nope, this is too much of a giant. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so.
and that I think I've applied. I was on the receiving end of those trainings, and I didn't go with the job. But is that one of those ones where like the door to door knocking was purely people were supposed to ask for money?
Yes, it was, because for the most part we were fundraising for like environmental causes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but hey,
Yeah.
some of those, like I'd say some of those are probably questionable. We should probably look into some of those.
Yeah, no, I applied for the same thing. I'm glad I ended up not taking the job. It didn't sound fun. And like honestly, probably a lot of those groups like might do really good work, but I didn't want to be the guy raising money door to door. So yeah, maybe not as bad as Amazon, not as exploitative as Amazon, but certainly interesting story. And what's unfortunate about the example you give is that it kind of, as you said, it like almost preys on young people who want to do good for the world. So that is
Exactly.
that is sad.
I agree. And so Jake, one of the next things I wanted to ask you was, I know the thing you mentioned with Andy Harris, it was around legalization of marijuana, right? So
Yeah.
This year we're in 2022. We're going to the ballot in November, and we're gonna have legalization on the ballot. So what are your thoughts there? How do you feel about this? As somebody who's been advocating. So
Yeah, no, great question. And to be honest, I wish that I had been following the specifics of the marijuana legalization bill that got passed in Maryland this year. I do understand, that it's going to be on the ballot in November for voters to be on. And, without getting into any of the details, which I will touch on in a second, without getting into any of the details, of course, I think this is great that we're finally going to have legalized marijuana for recreational and medicinal use in Maryland. I think it's terrible that anybody would have their life destroyed or have to be locked up in a cage and separated from their family simply for, smoking a plant that really doesn't hurt anybody and is, has less destructive societal effects than like something like alcohol, which I don't think should be illegal either. Full stop. I think it's good that we're legalizing this, but at the same time, I think it's absolutely too little, too late. The fact that states like neighboring Virginia, which is seen as more of a red state, beat us to this is really embarrassing. And so I don't want to see, And what I am afraid of is going to happen is that the Maryland General Assembly or Democratic leadership, there's going to be a whole lot of patting themselves on the back about how we're taking such a progressive leap into the future. And while that is true to a degree, again, this should have happened years ago. They've been, quote unquote, studying this issue for years. They continue to kick the can down the road. And you have to think, how many people's lives were ruined, how many people got criminal records, how many people's, futures were seriously impeded because our super democratic or our super majority democratic state, decided that they wanted to drag their feet on this very common sense civil rights issue in one of the most democratic states. Think of all the tax revenue that we lost out. And now to get into the actual specifics, again, I wish that I had, kind of studied this a little bit more ahead of time, but, just legalized marijuana, recreational, and medicinal, and allowing it to be sold in stores, I would say, is not good enough. We also need a marijuana legalization model that repairs some of the damages that the war on drugs have done, and specifically addresses the impacts to the communities that were most disproportionately impacted, particularly, the Black community and especially young Black men. And so, I didn't look into the details, but I've heard criticisms that what ended up getting passed was not nearly as strong in that equity aspect as it could have, in terms of making sure that the tax revenue gets reinvested in those communities to support, job opportunities in the industry for those communities. And so that we make sure that the legal marijuana industry, which I'm sure, as you know, Martin, will be huge, even just within the year or two, will be huge and generate a ton of tax revenue. And so what we don't want to see is that that industry get monopolized and corporatized like Amazon or like any other industry that we've talked about. So I don't know how good the bill is on those aspects. I think that it probably could have been a lot better in terms of that. So, I don't quite love what we got passed, but at the same time, at least it's legal marijuana is coming in Maryland. So that's a good thing.
Jill Carter did better on her version of the bill as far as on equity. And then, next year they're going to decide the framework, right? So that's where we really have to pay attention to next year is going to pass the ballot is the implementation and the framework of it.
Yeah.
I know that you believe probably, and I heard you mention it, that like, not only is cannabis a sexy issue right now that Democrats love to hop on, it is something that some of these same Democrats were against, 5, 7, even 2 years ago. So the thought is like, it's very interesting to see how like people juxtapose their opinions over time and for whatever different reasons. I always tell people that like, just being a political observer, I realized that some of these same Democrats were are more liberal with the Republican governor, right? Like, and they're more liberal, more left because they have to, juxtapose themselves from the red governor, who's like moderate on a lot of things. You know what I mean? So they have to very much differ themselves, but for some of the same reasons when, O'Malley was there, they were against some of these same, policies in which they would now be supporting. You know what I'm talking about? So the thought is like we see that swing all the time, and like there's many times I'm like, wait, where were you on this issue? Now it's an important talking point. It's on your literature of your walklet. You know what I mean? And I remember interviewing this. I'll tell you so. I remember interviewing with someone that I was helping get in office at the state legislature, and I was helping with the field coordinating. And I came on later in the campaign, but it was to be an assassin on the doors. And basically, we came down to talking about the pay. And I remember that they tried to just give me a little amount, like a crazy little amount. And I was like, first of all, I'm not leaving my house for that. You know what I mean? And then I said, two, you're not gonna go down there and be a champion for minimum wage, a $15 minimum wage, knowing that damn well you didn't pay me $15 to knock doors, build a field in your community to help you win. And then we came to an understanding, and everything worked out. But the thought is like you had to stand on that. Like, no, you're not gonna say one thing and do the other. Because I'll tell people, I'll show them the contract. I'll tell people. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to touch on your point of, it's interesting that, a lot of these Democratic electeds, when this marijuana legalization issue passes, they will act like it was such a common sense civil rights issue. And then, but yeah, if you look back at what they did just a couple years ago, they had the complete opposite tune, and there's any refusal to acknowledge that. And also to your point of, speculating maybe it's having a Republican governor makes them feel the need to act more left wing to differentiate themselves. And there's probably a kernel of truth in that, but I do just want to point out that Larry Hogan has been governor for 8 years. And for 8 years with the Republican governor, they still decided not to act on this issue. And by the time this thing gets passed on the ballot and it actually gets implemented in law, Larry Hogan's not even going to be the governor anymore. So, there's really no excuse for what they're doing. And to give an example of exactly what you're talking about of these Democrats who are going to act like champions on this issue, changing their answer. When I was on the Eastern Shore in college, Salisbury University, one of my things I would do is I would show up to, candidate forums and events, and I would ask, Democrat or elected, I would hold their feet to the fire on the issues. I still do today. And I remember it was 2018 or 2019, at the time, the Eastern Shore of Maryland, 9 counties, only had 1 Democratic state senator and 1 Democratic state delegate. Now the state senator has since lost, so they only have 1 Democratic state delegate, and it's a woman named Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes. In fact, she's now the Speaker pro tem. She's the second in command of the Speaker of the House. And I remember asking her at a forum about, will you support legal marijuana? And she came out super strongly against the idea of legalizing marijuana. Again, that was only 2018, 2019. Now, just 2 or 3 years later, she's going to be supportive of it. And it's because that at the end of the day, a lot of these elected officials, they're not even voting on what their personal opinions are. They're voting on what party leadership, the way that party leadership is telling them to vote, because they want to maintain their positions of power. And it's a shame that a lot of communities are harmed because of that.
I agree. And Jake, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, we saw a lot happen within, the election. We see a lot happen in the election. Are you still part of the progressive DLC?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually took that out of my bio that I sent you because I would say, yes, I am still the second vice chair of the progressive DLC. Yvette Lewis, as the chair of the state Democratic Party, she tried to remove me. She would say I am removed. I would argue she doesn't have the bylaw authority to remove me. So I would argue, yes, I still am the second vice chair of the progressive DLC. She would argue, no, I'm not. So it's kind of an open question. But yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, the Maryland Democratic Party is interesting in itself. I remember talking to, some of my fellow progressive cohorts, and one of the things I mentioned is hey, we don't have a platform. We don't have a platform. And of course I got that novel answer. Oh, what we take from the national platform and the national. Okay, well, I recognize that, but us as a state, our issues differ from what is at the national level. There's other states who have their state platform. You know what I mean? And I said, we as Maryland do not. So what do we stand for? You know what I mean? And the thought is a lot of times we don't know. I know that one of the things that, I've seen even, in Maryland is they have not been necessarily inviting of every Democrat, right? Because being a Democrat is not a monolith, right? There's many different Democrats. There's the Blue Dog, then there's the Bernie Dem, then there's the fiscally responsible, you know what I mean? So there's all these different type of Democrats, and they don't just always vote the same. They don't always care about the same issues. And one of the things that I've seen in Maryland is just not always inviting to the Democrats, right? Even in Ben Jealous' case, I feel like the Democratic Party and many actors in the Democratic Party let Ben Jealous down, right? Yes, there's things that Ben could have done differently and campaign things he could have done differently, sure. But I think that, in fact, the Maryland Democratic Party and a lot of their stakeholders let him down. yes, some of them came to the party, but some of them came late, and some of them came without gifts, so that's the expression I'll use.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think all of that, including the issue of them not having a platform, which is bad, because this is how we get a Republican governor in a supermajority Democratic state, is when Democrats fail to govern in a way that makes people's lives better, and people get desperate, turn to a Republican alternative. But the reason why the Democrats are so non-committal to sticking to a platform or committing on issues is because by and large the party apparatus and many of our elected officials are completely dependent on corporate donations to get elected, and oftentimes the interests of a corporation or a business are completely contradictory to the interests of the average worker or community member. So I think that's what boils down to, is a lot of the things that need to be done to make people's lives better is going to require holding corporations and workplaces accountable. But because the Democratic Party takes so much of their campaign donations from those entities, they're not willing to do that. So that's why they don't want to have this platform conversation, because that might require them to actually commit to, like a $15 minimum wage or a $20 minimum wage now. And so really at the local level here in Howard County, but of course this applies at the state and national level, money in politics works the same at every level. You have moneyed interests and businesses donating to get policy favors from elected officials to deregulate, and so that they can have policy that's going to make them more money. And so we need serious campaign finance reform, particularly at the local level. My race for Democratic Central Committee, and with my team, my HOCO for Us slate team running, one of our some of our big platform items is creating a state and local party platform so that we can have something to hold elected Democrats accountable to, and also so that we can say to voters, the Democratic Party does stand for something. Here's what it stands for. So not only that, but when we're talking about corporate influence through donations at the local level in Howard County, and I would guess that this is very similar at the local level in Laurel and at the local level in Prince George's County. We come from a Bernie Sanders background nationally, and he talks about, I don't accept any money from Big Pharma. I don't accept any money from the health insurance industry. I don't accept any money from the military industrial complex, because those are the industries donating at the national level. But what I've learned at the local level since coming back from college in 2020 is that by and large at the local level, it is one industry mainly donating, and that is the development industry. And so this is a issue in an industry that was completely new to me, because Bernie Sanders national politics never got into that. But really 80 to 90% of the issues that a county or city council votes on are zoning and land use issues. That's what affects the budget. And if we're bad on those issues, our elected officials are bought off by those industries. They're going to vote to give all of our tax money to the developers, tax breaks for developers. And that means our schools aren't being built, our infrastructure is not being built, affordable housing isn't being built. So that is two of our big pushes as a HOCO for Us slate, is to get a state and local platform and to combat the influence of corporate and developer money in politics.
Hey, that's a noble cause, and we know a lot of times, or if you don't know, follow the money. So any type of campaigns, see who those interests are. If not a lot of individuals, they probably have interest in these corporations or some businesses.
And one last point on that is, you bring up Ben Jealous and how certain Democrats aren't accepted into the party, and that's the answer, is that progressives or Democrats who are willing to take on the special interests in the corporations, which I believe Ben Jealous was, they don't get the support. They get kneecapped because we go against the interests of the donor class. So that's kind of the civil war, if you want to look at it that way, that is happening in the party right now.
You're right. And, with a state with overwhelming Democratic support, we should have more than, one Democratic governor every 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the last 20, that's what it's looked like, unfortunately. And, Jake, I really applaud you for putting your name on the ballot. Before I get you out of here, a couple quick speed questions. So, Pepsi or Coke?
You said what? Oh, Pepsi or Coke?
Yes, yeah.
I'm a Coke guy. Coke guy.
Got you. Favorite superhero?
Oh my God, I'm not a huge superhero guy, but I guess I like Batman just because he doesn't have any powers, so that's kind of cool.
Yes. Go to nature spot in Howard County. Where are you going? You got the day off. Go to nature spot. You recommend?
Go to nature spot. Rockburn Park, right by me. Got some really nice basketball courts too.
Rockburn. Okay, it was Rockburn or Burn?
Rockburn
Burn.
Park.
Okay,
one word. Yes.
Gotta check that out when I'm in Howard County next. I appreciate you, Jake, and of course, thanks, man. July 19th is gonna be a big date for you guys, and it's a lot of races all over the state. So, good luck to you guys, and I'm sure I'll see you out there on the trail.
Absolutely. One quick shout out I'd like to give is, again, running for Democratic Central Committee in Howard County with the slate of 16 others. We're called HOCO for Us slate. We are not taking any developer donations. We've taken the no developer donation campaign pledge. We're limiting our donations to $250 a person because we don't want to be influenced by big donors either. And so because we're grassroots funded and because it's for Democratic Central Committee that not a lot of people pay attention to, we really rely on grassroots donations and support. So I would really appreciate anybody watching this. Go to our website, hocoforus.com. 4 is the number 4, hocoforus.com. Check us out. Check out our issues. Check out our platform. And please consider donating. It really goes a long way in this race.
Yes. Thank you, Jake. So you already gave them the last thing is how to stay connected with you. That's how you can stay connected with Jake and, all the people on his slate in Howard County. And, I look forward to watching the results, Jake. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Martin. Keep up all the great work.
I appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. That was this week's episode of People Over Politics. See you next week.